There have three different meanings of science. First is science is a knowledge that based on observation and experimental. Second is knowledge that dealing with the phenomena of the universe and their law, and also knowledge that different from the art and technology. Next, we will see the difference between science and also the technologies. As you can see, science answer the why question. It is because science produce hypothesis, theory, and law to explain. It is because science hold to the cause effect. Different with the technologies is answer the how question. Technologies produce product or technique to solve problem. Next is science method. So first we will start with the why question. Next we formulate the hypothesis. Next, we conduct the experiment and observation. Fourth, we analyze data and draw a conclusion. If the experimental and observation is equal to the hypothesis, it means we will accept the hypothesis. If not, we will reject the hypothesis and we will formulate the new one. Next, lastly, we will propose an explanation and also a theory. Inside, we have induction and also deduction. So induction means is particular to general. Insight is mean observation to general conclusion. For example, for the observation, we have three methods, which is method X, Y, and Z are expanded when it is heated. So for the general conclusion, we can say that all the methods are expanded when it is heated. Next is deduction. Deduction is from the general to the particular. For in the science, is from general knowledge to the prediction and also knowledge. For example, we have general conclusion is all the metals are expanded when it heated. For the particular, first we know that when iron is heated, it is expanded. So second is when the copper is heated, it will expanded, and also when metal X is heated, it will expanded. There have three integral character of the sign. First is reductionism. Second is repeatability, and third is refutation. These are the advantage of scientific method. First is based on observation, experimental, and also logical. Next is it is repeatable and also objective, and third is self-correcting. Next, we will see the limitation of scientific method, which is first is induction problem, second is reductionism, third is result of experiment depends on technique and also the instrument. Next is science paradigm. Paradigm is meaning is pattern of the thinking, while science paradigm is mean the entire constellation of belief, value, and technique, and so on, that shared by the member of the given scientific community. These two are the example of paradigm.
My name is Insyirah Binti Ahmad Zammani, and I will present about the history of science. First, we will look at the Aristotle science, which was the most prominent science for about 2000 years, starting from 300 BC to 1600 AD. This science adheres to the geocentric concept where the Earth is the center of the universe. It also states that Earth is a fixed object that does not revolve around the sun or spin on its axis. The universe spherical arrangement is believed to start with the Earth, Moon, planets, Sun, stars, and lastly is the prime mover, believing it as the heaven where God and angel live. According to Aristotle's view of science, everything has a hierarchy. The illustration of the great chain of being represents a hierarchy where the lowest is the most dreadful place, which is hell, to the highest, which is heaven, where God lives. Under the influence of Saint Augustine, the Europeans believed that the world is full of evil and misery. They thought that the imperial heaven is the only one that is important, and earth is not. So that's the reason why they refuse to know and understand the world. Aristotle's science is actually not a normal science that is based on induction, where we do some experiment. But still, the Europeans believe everything that Aristotle says without proving whether it's true or not. Next, we proceed to the two regions of universe, which are sublunar and superlunar. Sublunar is situated between Moon and Earth and has four basic elements, which are Earth, water, air, and fire. Soil and water are the heavy elements, so it will move downward toward the center of Earth. Meanwhile, air and fire is the light element, so it will move upward. Based on the law of motion of sublunar, every moving object will eventually stop, and the fixed object will remain static unless there is an outside force that drives it. Different with superlunar circle, where it started from the moon and up, including all celestial. It only has one basic element, which is ether, that compose objects like moons, sun, planets, and stars. The law of motion of superlunar says that the object will move continuously in circular motion around the Earth. From the characteristic, we know that everything in sublunar is corruptible and changeable, which makes it imperfect. Meanwhile, superlunar is assumed to be the opposite of it. So obviously, the perfect will influence the imperfect, which means the outer spheres will affect the movement of inner spheres. Astrology also believes that the planets and stars will influence the human destiny on Earth. Next, let's move on to the scientific revolution that replaced the old science to a new science, which is called as heliocentric. It started with Copernicus in 1543, where he introduced a new cosmic system in which sun is the center of the universe. The reason Copernicus came up with this idea is because he held on to the ideology of Plato, where he used the sun as metaphor to describe goodness and eventually changed to represent God. Second is Bruno in 1584, who had a more extreme view where he stated that the universe is infinite and God does not create this world. This led to a huge debate with Protestant Christianity and Catholic Christianity. Third is Kepler, that say that Earth and Sun is a gigantic magnet, and this magnet that actually makes the planet move in elliptical orbits around the Sun. Lastly is Galileo Galilei in 1564, where he discovered that Aristotle's science is wrong after making some observation using telescope. Galilei found three pieces of evidence that contradict with Aristotle's statement. First, the moon is a massive lump of rock, just like the Earth, and not made out of ether. Second, there are 4 moons that are actually orbiting around Jupiter, which eventually deny the claim that the Earth is the center of rotation for all planets. And lastly is the dark spots on the Sun, which show that the superlunar region is not as perfect as has been said.
Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. My name is Jazmina Balqis, Binti Mohamad Jafflos, and I will explain Chapter 3, Epistemology. Knowledge according to Al-Atas. Knowledge comes from God. Knowledge is the soul's arrival, husul, at the meaning of a thing, and the arrival, husul, of meaning of a thing in the soul. Meaning is the recognition of the place of anything in a system. System is a whole composed of parts. System is any collection of interrelated parts where a change in one part will affect some or all of the other parts. 4 sources and methods of knowledge. First, sound senses, sound reason, true reports, and intuition. 5 external senses of sound is touch, taste, smell, sight, and hear. 5 internal senses is common sense, convert object to form, memory, store form, stimulative faculty, perform judgment and opinion, memory and recollection, store meaning, imagination faculty, creative thinking, and invention. Sound reason is arriving at a correct conclusion from a right premise. True reports, there are 2 types. First is Al-Quran revelation and tradition from the Prophet. This is the absolute truth. Reports from someone who don't spread falsehood, general agreement of scholars, scientists, and experts. This is not absolute. Intuition, the lowest intuition experienced by scientists and scholars in their creative discoveries. The highest intuition experienced by prophets. Limit of truth. Knowledge is limitless because of the objects of knowledge are without limit. But there is a limit of truth in every object of knowledge. so that the pursuit of true knowledge is not an endless search. Philosophy and wisdom. Philosophy is love of wisdom. Wisdom is a combination of two types of knowledge, which is illuminating knowledge and science. Wisdom is knowing the practical boundary and meaningful limit of matters and specialized knowledge. Hikmah, adab, and adil. First, to know how to put what knowledge in which place is wisdom. Then, adab is the action by which we actualize the condition of being in the proper place. The result is this action is adil. Adil is the condition of being in the proper place.
Chapter 4: Philosophy. There are 4 branches of philosophy, which is ontology, epistemology, axiology, and logic. Ontology talks about metaphysics. Metaphysics means things which is beyond matter, body, and physics. In another word, metaphysics talks about things unseen with naked eyes. Something unseen such as soul, hell and heaven, sin and reward, the afterlife, and many more. Epistemology. Epistemology focuses on knowledge, or in another word, theory of knowledge. Theory of knowledge talks about sources of knowledge and limits of one's knowledge field. There are 2 knowledge, which is illuminative knowledge and science. There are 4 sources of knowledge, which is sound sense, which we know as the 5 sense, sound reason, true report, and intuition. Next is axiology. Axiology is a study about value and rationalism. Value as in good or bad, right or wrong, beautiful or ugly. For example, on Western country, wearing a bikini at beach is okay, but on some Asian country, it is not okay. This can also be said in science. For example, in science, we do not question whether abortion is okay or not. Last but not least is logic. Logic talks about the theory about rationalism. It can also be linked with methodology in humans' intellect. Logic is mostly used in biology philosophy, as in explaining the difference in one species with another species. School of thought. There are many schools of thought, which is Occam's razor, or law of parsimony, scientism, phenomenalism, idealism and materialism, skepticism, and theory of truth. Occam's razor, or also known as law of economy. Law of economy talks about entities should not be posited unnecessarily, believe in simple law and simple explanation. Scientism talks about scientific method or method of natural science. Phenomenalism talks about science, which phenomenon is known and can be observed. Idealism is about minds, which is ultimate reality, while materialism is about a material, such as mind, thought, feeling, and many more. Skepticism can be said as doubt and belief of nothing. Lastly is the theory of truth, which is correspondent truth, coherence truth, and pragmatic truth.
So as for the conclusion, we can see that science is a very wide knowledge that contains law and theories that come from experiment and also an observation. Science also is related to a religion such as Islam. For example, there have a slightly different between a theory of human formation between Islam and also science. That's all for us. Thank you.